Indra Nooyi is one of the world's leading business executives. She reached the pinnacle of U.S. enterprise as CEO of American food and drinks giant Pepsico for 12 years.
I had a loyal set of people that followed me because they just thought they became better leaders, better executives, better people after they'd worked with me.
She's been named among the most powerful people on the planet. And she brings a unique insight into the challenges of achieving equality on Wall Street.
There's nobody like me. A colored woman, immigrant from an emerging market. So there was always this feeling that I was so different from the others and I had to earn a place at the table.
She now sits on the boards of companies including Amazon and Philips and has written a book reflecting on her remarkable career, My Life in Full.
I had my fair share of critics, but that's okay. But over time, it went from, oh my God, what the hell is Indra doing, to, God, Indra is so prescient, to Indra was so ahead of everybody else on performance and purpose. So I feel like I've been vindicated.
Indra Nooyi, thank you so much for speaking to us on Leaders with Lacqua. You've had such an incredible career. What did you learn about being a woman in power?
Well, it was lonely in the early days, so I didn't look at myself as a woman in power. I just looked at myself as this alien being that showed up in corporate America because there was nobody like me, a colored woman, immigrant from an emerging market. So there was always this feeling that I was so different from the others and I had to earn a place at the table. Though that was the early days. But as the years progressed and we got into the 2020s, things started to get better. 2018, 2019, things started to get better. I would say it wasn't easy. It was lonely, it was tough, and it was hard work.
But Indra, did you ever doubt yourself? So when you say, I was like an alien, just trying to keep up almost, did you ever think, actually, this is too hard, this is unjust, this is unfair?
I didn't think that. I said, oh my God, how am I going to hold on? What do I need to do to prove that I deserve a seat at this table? How do I contribute? How do I make myself be heard? How do I deliver something that's way better than what everybody else has so that people look at me and go, she's the real thing? And so I was actually driven to perform. I was driven to prove myself, and I was just driven to learn and expand my own thinking. So I took upon it as a challenge and an adventure to do well in this environment.
Have you met many men that actually also felt they needed to prove that they had a seat at the table?
Maybe, but I think men, because the brotherhood is so strong, they don't have to talk about their fears and their concerns, because if they do, they talk amongst themselves and I never hear about it. In my case, I felt it, I lived it. And so I can talk about it in the first person. Most of the guys I know, sort of say, yeah, the job is tough, it's a new job, but I'll make it happen. Or they'll chat with their guy friends and somehow the brotherhood gives them a hand. In a way, the brotherhood gave me a hand too, Francine. I should tell you that all the mentors who pulled me and supported me and coached me and developed me were all white men. And they were phenomenal in terms of how much they invested in my career.
What I hear, almost day in, day out by women in powerful positions is that you have to be the best if you're going to make it. You have to be better than any man. How do we achieve true equality?
In those days, I'd say, remember, I started my corporate career here in 1980. So I'd say between 1980 and about 2007, 8, 10, that period, I would say that women had to be way better than men to be taken seriously. I think as more women have come into the workforce and they're beginning to really thrive and show their true worth, I think that now people are looking at women as a serious force in corporate America who can actually drive the agenda forward. But in the early days, we were so new that people I thought people were wondering why we were there at the table at all. Maybe they were not, but this was just my own perception because, I would read body language, I would do whatever. This is just me, maybe imagining things. I just say, God, they haven't accepted me as yet.
When did you feel accepted? Was there a day where you thought, actually, I can be myself and people will listen?
There were times when, where the turning point happened, where in a meeting, the CEO would look at everybody, hear everybody's point of view, and then say, let's stop and see what Indra has to say, because she usually has a way of capturing what needs to be done and telling us, what the next step should be. So then I realized maybe I have something to bring to the table, demystifying the complex, giving people a clear path forward. And I think those many mentors I had along the way, Francine, actually helped me build my confidence by making statements like this. Let's hear what Indra has to say. Indra, you've been unusually quiet. Don't you want to say something? Because you usually have great things to say. So by giving me these tailwinds, they helped me build my confidence. And over time, I realized that, I deserve a seat at the table, and maybe I have something to contribute here.
Yeah, well, you definitely did. So what do you think are your leadership qualities? And actually, do we ask different leadership qualities now than we did 20 years ago?
Actually, two different answers. I think that I succeeded over the years, one, because I based my entire leadership on competence. I spent a lot of time making sure the business, the topic I was working on, I had mastery of. Enough mastery to understand what we needed to do, how we needed to adapt whatever solution, and then adopt it inside the company. I had the ability to zoom out and look at issues in a broad way, and then zoom in and implement them. So this is something that I was known for. And people would always say I had enormous strategic acuity because I could connect seemingly unconnected dots and make a shape out of it. So these were one set of skills that people would say, look, if you need this sort of a skill, go to Indra. On the personal side, I loved people. So I would reach out to everybody from senior executives down to the front line. I showed tremendous empathy. I cared about people. And people loved to work for me. And they would say, what Indra does is raise the bar for us, but she helps us get there. She mentors, she develops, she coaches. And I had a loyal set of people that followed me because they just thought they became better leaders, better executives, better people after they'd worked with me for a few years.
Do you think, Indra, that self-doubt is more of a feminine trait than you see in men?
I think women talk about it, men may not talk about it, they may have it, but a lot of women I know do have self-doubt. And I think it's because people don't give them that boost of confidence they need, explicit boost of confidence. As I told you in my case, some of my bosses gave me that explicit boost of confidence. And I think we ought to find people who tell a woman, look, that was a great job you did, or that presentation was outstanding. I think we have to get more people, either promoters of women or people in the sisterhood who give women that confidence, explicit confidence, which is still lacking. It's happening now little by little, but it's still lacking.
Coming up, Indra Nooyi on the challenges of raising children while leading one of the world's most valuable companies.
When your kid writes you this note saying, Mom, please come home. If you come home, I love you more. Please, please, please. You just sit there and cry.
Indra Nooyi is one of the world's most admired business leaders, but her punishing work life meant sacrifices at home. We discuss empowering employees and the challenges she faced as a woman and a mother at the top of corporate America.
Do we need even more nurturing post-pandemic? Is the way that we talk with employees going to change?
I think talent becomes the single biggest differentiator of a successful entity versus an unsuccessful entity. So you've got to do everything possible to hire, train, retain, put your arms around talent. I mean, you really got to focus on your talent. In the past, it's always been give them money, show them that they have an upward mobility and can make even more money, and that's the only reason people come to work. I think post-pandemic, we're seeing more and more people say, I have to worry about me as a person. I have to worry about my family. I want to worry about my well-being, my mental health. So we've got to start encompassing people as holistic humans as opposed to a tool of the trade, which means that we have to engage with them head, heart, and hands, not just head and hands. The heart has to be engaged. So we have to show more empathy, show that we care, that they're citizens of the community, they're members of a family, and all of those have to come into consideration as we help an executive or an employee be an employee and be a person of the community and the family. The stakes are higher.
Indra, how many leaders do you think are thinking like that right now? Is there anyone in the business world today that you admire?
Well, I don't see too many CEOs, but the people I read about, people like Mark Benioff were doing this all the time. I even look at people at Amazon, whose board I sit on. They do care about employee well-being, and a lot of people are working flexibly. And they say, hey, that's what it takes to keep the employee happy in a world where talent is in short supply. Let's do that. I was talking to somebody from Stripe the other day, the company that, is still private. But, she's working out in New York, the company's in California. But the fact of the matter is, they said, as long as you can do the job, and as long as you can interact with the executives now and then, we care about you because you have a kid in school, your family is in New York, go ahead and stay there. So I think people are now waking up and saying, if I lose this employee because I don't give him or her the flexibility, I'm not going to be able to hire somebody very easily to replace them of this caliber. So let me start with the talent I need, not combine the talent and location at the same time, which is what we did in the past.
Yeah. I enjoyed your book. I actually really, really loved it. And in it, Indra, you talk about, juggling work-life balance, juggling kids, even being sent, I think, by your mother to get a pint of milk because you had nothing at home and you'd just been nominated chief executive. What are you like as a mother?
Let me give you my perspective. I'll give you my kids' perspective next. I think I'm a very, very loving, very involved mother. And if my kids need me, I will drop everything and go to them. Okay. If they're hurt just a little bit, I'm the most doting mother, and I will just smother my kids with love and affection, and they know that. On the other hand, as with all kids whose mothers worked, they wished mom was there full time during their childhood years. Even though had I been there full time, they'd have said, God, she's hovering over us. Because I've seen a lot of kids who had stay-at-home mothers who said, I wish my mother would work like you. So I think they like it both ways. Work, but be there on demand for us. Today, they would say, mom has high standards, but mom is loving, loving, loving. In fact, she's a bit smothering. And only recently have I learned to let go a little bit. In the past, if my kids don't text me 3 times a day, I'd go nuts. Now I'm saying, they must be all right. So let me not, hover over them too much. So I'm trying to let go in the last 2 or 3 years. And kids are liking it. But I would say on balance, I'm a good mom.
Have you never not felt mom guilt? And
all the time. Felt mom guilt all the time.
But why? Is it society?
No, when your kid writes you this note saying, Mom, please come home. If you come home, I love you more. Please, please, please. You just sit there and cry. Or when you come home from a trip at 10 o'clock in the night and, there's no smartphone, so you haven't been able to text and talk to your daughter. And she says, Mom, I had something so important to tell you. I waited at the door till 10 o'clock and then I went to bed. And I only came home at 11 because the flight was delayed. Those times you feel like your heart is being cut open and wrenched from you. So you sit there and have a good cry that, am I doing the right thing? But then, you've got to think ahead and say, if you were not doing this, would you feel a different sort of a rage or regret? The answer is yes. I think all trade-offs have got sadness and regrets and rage associated with it when you pick one path versus the other. So the challenge is to try to do both. It's a tremendous cost for you personally, but if you can somehow pull it off, live with the consequences.
And your husband has been, I think, by reading your book, your biggest champion in this.
He's been a rock.
What happens if you don't have a supportive partner?
That is a challenge. And this is why I wrote this book, because not everybody has a supportive partner. Not everybody has multi-generational families helping them out. And, there's a book written by a sociologist, Eric Kleinenberg, called Palaces for the People, that profoundly impacted me because he talks about community centers, little towns with barber shops, libraries, civic centers, where community connections are built. And this is where families have to go to get support. And I honestly believe we have to rebuild trust in communities we all have to come together to help each other out, because the nature of the family has changed. Even if it didn't change because people did it by choice, some families are messy, families break up for all kinds of reasons, and very often the woman is left with the children and the entire responsibility of going out, getting a job and a paycheck, and taking care of the children. That's an enormous burden. And I think it's very important that as communities, we come together and start to provide support to each other to say, hey, how can I help you in your time of need so you can help me in my time of need? And everybody get together and somehow make it happen. Again, families have to be at the center. Families are successful only if communities come together. So we have to anchor families and communities and talk about them differently, including how we build communities, how we build inner cities. All of this has to be rethought.
But this goes really to the fabric of society, and it's difficult, cultures are different, regions are different, families are different. So how do you make sure that people feel anchored and supported in such a way?
Loneliness is a common trait. Doesn't matter which culture or which country or whatever. Loneliness is a common trait. Need for human connection is a common need across the world. As long as there's a human being, everybody wants human connection. We are building a society of young people who interact just with technology and think that's the world. So somehow or the other, we have to make it as aspirational for the young people to go out and interact with people, older people, multi-generational people, so that their life is richer for interacting in a human way with those people, as opposed to avatars of those people on screen, and making the screen so much more aspirational that you think that dealing with 3D figures and putting on your AR or VR glasses is the entire world. I worry about a world that is, all technology driven and loses the human side of it. So I hope, as we think about the advancement of technology, we worry a lot about what we're going to do about loneliness, human connections, taking care of multi-generations, and creating a better society and a better population.
But Indra, whose job is it to worry about it? So if you look at the metaverse, which is what you're describing, do I, as a mother, as a parent, limit the screen time for my kids, or is it regulation from the government? Is there, is it private companies? Like, how do you deal with that?
When we start talking about regulation, everybody's haunches get up. I'm not talking about regulation, because then you don't know where this stops. I think if you recreate family, connections, if you recreate community connections, you have to make it aspirational for young people to leave the technology and get out. It's not mandating screen time, because if you're not there, they can easily break those mandates, especially if they're in the middle of the game and they don't want to stop. So it's very hard to enforce it, and very hard to enforce it for teenage kids. I think the best thing you can do is create community activities where people have to interact, and create a real desire on the part of the young people to want to go out and interact with those people. I mean, my daughter, several years ago, my older daughter, I asked her, what would you like for your birthday? And she looked at me and she said, can you stop the internet for 1 week? So what do you mean? She said, yeah, just shut down the global internet for 1 week, so we never have to interact with technology, we just interact with people. I think young people would like to interact with people too. And so it's the challenge we all have. Just as all the tech companies advance technology so much to make us want to interact with technology so much, I think we have to figure out who's going to make other activities aspirational, so people want to get out of the technology and go into human connections.
Coming up, the best and worst advice Indra Nooyi has ever received. Plus, her proudest achievement from her time in charge of PepsiCo.
I had my fair share of critics, but that's okay. But over time, it went from, oh my God, what the hell is Indra doing, to, God, Indra is so prescient, to Indra was so ahead of everybody else on performance with purpose. So I feel like I've been vindicated.
Indra Nooyi led American food and drinks giant PepsiCo for 12 years, overseeing a drive for healthier products and greater sustainability. We discuss her proudest achievement, as well as the best and worst advice she's ever received.
Indra, what are you most proud of as your time as chief executive?
Performance with purpose. I think I was way ahead of my time, but I think that was the right direction for Pepsico. It was the right direction for industry. And, each one should interpret purpose as it's relevant to their business. I think with ESG metrics now, it's almost validating performance with purpose. With too many metrics, I would argue, but it's validating performance with purpose. And I feel proud about it. When I first put it in, I had my fair share of critics, but that's okay. But over time, it went from, oh my God, what the hell is Indra doing, to, God, Indra is so prescient, to Indra was so ahead of everybody else on performance with purpose. So I feel like I've been vindicated. And I think that's what I feel most gratified about my time in PepsiCo about.
How many job offers do you get a day?
I don't know about job offers. I get requests to be on boards, advisory boards, boards of SPACs. I get maybe, I wouldn't say per day, but on a week, I may get 5 or 10. My dance card is full at this point, Francine.
And Indra, you wouldn't want another big job at a big company to make a difference once again?
I'm making a difference in everything I'm doing right now. Between Amazon, Philips, MIT, Memorial Sloan Kettering, teaching up at West Point. As I said, my dance card is full, and I feel like I'm contributing enormously now, working on the care equation.
Yeah.
So I don't have a single minute available to do anything else.
What's the best piece of advice you've ever received, and what's the worst piece of advice you've ever received?
I think the best, which I got from my grandfather as a kid, and I've carried it through, is you've got to remain a lifelong student. You've got to engage in lifelong learning, because the day you stop doing that, you're going to atrophy. Sometimes I'd say, no, once I finish college, I'm done with learning. But I realized that if I don't keep learning, somehow I feel like the world is just running ahead of me, and I don't know what world I'm in. So for everybody, I'd say lifelong learning is critically important. The worst piece of advice also came from my grandfather. He'd always say, Satan has work for idle hands. It's actually, I think, a biblical saying, but he would quote that to me all the time. And so I felt the urge to always be doing something, read something, engage in some activity, go clean, go organize. I find it impossible to just sit and do nothing. Sometimes I say, God, I'm exhausted. I want to sit and meditate or do something. But when I start my meditation, I go, nah, it's too much time, downtime for the brain. I better get back to doing something. So this wise man gave me 2 pieces of advice, which might have been timely then, but one stood me in good stead for decades, and the other one has wired me so differently, I wish I could unwire myself.
That's brilliant. Indra Nooyi, thank you so much for being with us today.
Francine, thank you for having me. It was a pleasure chatting with you.